What a pleasure to be with you all. Now, I've been looking forward to this for a very long time, for many reasons. I'm so glad to be here to see you all and to see old friends like Clay and old friends and running buddies like Winona LaDuke you're going to hear from for a little while. The reason I'm happiest to be here, by far, the thing that I've been looking forward to for the very long time, is my first chance to meet Toma Lewis Klein over there in the front row, 4 months old now. Now, y'all are youth leaders, okay? But in fact, one thing I always tell, and I mostly work with young people at 350 around the world, one thing I always tell people in a sense is don't really think of yourselves as youth leaders. You guys are just leaders, absolute full participants in this whole thing. Toma, however, is a youth. And when you see someone who is 4 months old and you get the sense of, well, you just are reminded exactly why we've got to do what we've got to do. And we are going to do what we got to do. I have no doubt about that. I was so happy earlier this year when I was in Rio for the big Rio conference, which was just horrible. It couldn't have been worse. Just the ongoing nonsense of the UN, which is sort of like the ongoing nonsense of all our national governments, but multiplied by 100, in some horrible way. And I'd been in there about 2 hours. I'd arrived late, flying in from Istanbul, and I just was not wanting to be there. And Cam came up and said, "Will you help? We're going to do this sit down of some kind." And man, I was so happy to do that and to sit there on the floor outside, sitting in for a couple hours, and then everybody decided it'd be a good idea to walk out and turn in our credentials, and I was even happier at that. It was not only did it sort of lead the news that night, but it meant I didn't have to go back the next day to this horrible, crazy thing, and we all just went to the beach and talked and planned, and it was great. It's about time that we started taking this really seriously, and I mean by really seriously, not playing along with the various games that we've been kind of asked to play along with, because it's too urgent now for any of that. I'm not going to bother listing everything that's going on around the world right now. Suffice it to say that it's happening a lot faster and on a lot bigger scale than we would have thought 25 years ago when I wrote that first book about all this, back when I was your age. We would not have predicted that in the course of this year, we would have seen Arctic ice, basically summer sea ice, disappear. By the time the melt season ended this year, to your north, there was about 25% of the ice left in the summer Arctic that was there when I was born. We've taken one of the biggest physical features on Earth and we've broken it, and the other ones are right behind. I woke up this morning in Nanaimo in BC and looked out at the beautiful ocean, and it's as beautiful as ever. I mean, yesterday on the ferry across, huge pod of dolphins, breaking water in front of us, and it couldn't have been more beautiful, but that water's 30% more acid than it was when I was your age. The temperature, as you know, of this continent this summer was as high as it's ever been, and that heat and that drought led to a horrible grain harvest across this continent that caused the price of corn and soybeans around the world to go up by 40%. So for us, that's dealable with, but think about our brothers and sisters around the world who have to somehow come up with enough coins every day in the market to get the cornmeal to make tortillas for their family for dinner. The 40% increase in the price of corn is by far the biggest thing that happened in their lives this year. I'm really happy to be here tonight, but I confess that some part of my brain is sort of thinking about the East Coast of the United States right now, where I live and where just like a year ago, another one of these monster hurricanes is making its way up the the coast, and with it, the threat of a huge storm surge pushing walls of water across an already raised ocean into people's lives. We're really at the edge here, and there is no time anymore for the half measures. The half measures that if we started doing them 25 years ago would have been a big help, you know, the sort of small course corrections and regulations and things. But at this point, fit the category of too little, too late. I wrote a piece for Rolling Stone this summer that went kind of oddly, it went kind of oddly viral. Clay, on the cover of that issue of Rolling Stone, the cover was Justin Bieber. And it was very funny. The editor called me up the next day and said, something strange is going on because your piece has 10 times as many likes on Facebook as the Justin Bieber piece, you know. And the reason was because it just laid out the math of where we are right now. The only number the world's agreed on about climate change is 2 degrees. That's what all the governments of the world, including even the Harper government, have said is the most we could allow the temperature to rise. It's too much. I mean, 1 degree, which is what we've done so far, has melted the Arctic. But 2 degrees is the one thing that at least they've said they'll commit to. The second number in that piece was about 565 gigatons of carbon. That's how much the scientists say we can emit still and have some hope of staying below that 2 degree mark, 565 billion tons. The third number, the scary one, was the number that delineated how much carbon the fossil fuel industry already had in its reserves. Coal, oil, and gas that they've already identified, that they know where it is, that they are planning to mine and drill and pump, that their share price is based on, that they borrow money against. That number is 2,795 gigatons, or 5 times as much as the most conservative governments say that we could safely burn. That means that there's no longer any room for wishful thinking or speculation or doubt of any kind. This story is written unless we unwrite it. This is now a rogue industry, the fossil fuel industry. They are outlaws, not against the laws of the state. They get to write those too often, but outlaw against the laws of physics. And that's an even more, in this case, grievous offense. And that means that we know what we have to do. That's the usefulness of those numbers. It's laid out exactly before us. We have got to bring these guys to heel, and we've got to do it very, very quickly. They're beginning, just beginning to have some sense of what's coming at them. Earlier this year, the CEO of Exxon, Rex Tillerson, a company that holds 7% of the carbon in its own reserves, one company, 7% of the carbon necessary to take us past 2 degrees, 7% of the carbon necessary to break the planet, one company. Rex Tillerson gave a speech in which he said, yes, it's true, global warming is real, forget all the things that my predecessors have said. But then he said, it's an engineering problem with engineering solutions. And someone asked him, what do you mean? And he said, well, if we need to move our crop production areas, then we will. Which, if you think about it, is completely crazy talk. Crop production areas are what other people call farms. And we already have them every place where you can farm. The simple fact that Exxon is melting the Arctic doesn't mean you can go up on the tundra and start growing corn. If you make it too hot in Iowa to grow corn, which is what we did this year, you can't just transport it up to some place where there is no soil. These guys, arrogance and hubris and greed is the problem. And we've got to take it on, and we will take it on.